I see a lot of stuff like this shared. Um, why do we have $30 trillion in debt? Is it because the poor rely too much on welfare? Is it because they're taxed too little? Is it because billionaires don't pay enough tax? Too much corporate welfare? These are interesting questions, and usually it's a bit difficult to decide what's right or wrong politically. It depends on agreeing on some core assumptions as to what the right thing to do is, what your preferred outcome is, that sort of thing. But I think this one we can kind of boil down to a math problem. If we agree that $30 trillion in debt is a bad thing, and I think most rational people would agree that this is a pretty big problem. So, assuming that that's the problem, what are the possible reasons for it and solutions for it? So let's check it out. All right, so it's actually almost $34 trillion right now. Federal government is spending about 6.1 trillion a year, about 1.8 trillion more than it's bringing in taxes. So this is the shortfall. All right, so we're bringing in, uh, yeah, negative 1.8 trillion dollars. All right. Well, what if we just tax all the companies more? Let's look at the 500 biggest businesses in America, the biggest corporations with the most profit. Um, let's see how much money they make. So 2021 figure, $1.58 trillion. Okay. All right, cool. What if we take 100% of the money that these Fortune 500 companies are profiting and apply that to our spending? Oh, interesting. 1.56, 1.77. So even if we taxed all the corporate profits away, we would still be spending into debt. That's interesting. All right. Well, where are we spending it? We're spending it on Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, followed by defense, followed by interest on debt. All right. So we are spending a very large portion of this money on various, I guess, welfare classified systems. But we're also spending a lot on war, and we're spending a lot just because we're spending a lot. We're spending so much on these other three things that we're now in in such debt that it's the fourth biggest budget item and probably will become the third biggest shortly. Um, well, could we pay down this debt if we just taxed billionaires? It's $34 trillion, right? Billionaires have a lot of money. Let's see how much billionaires. Let's see, there's 748 billionaires in the United States. Oh, they have $5 trillion. That's a lot of money, right? $5 trillion. All right. Well, oh, geez. $5 trillion isn't going to make much of a dent in that, is it? That's only going to put us back, what, a year or two in spending? It's pretty rough. It's actually a lot worse than that, though. They don't actually have $5 trillion. This is the valuation of all the stock that these people hold in their companies. Almost none of this is dollars in the bank. Um, if these billionaires were to sell off any substantial portion of this uh, lifetime accumulation of wealth they have, this $5 trillion, that would crash the stock price, because how stocks work is that you can only sell things for what somebody else is willing to buy it for. So unless there's somebody else out there that's willing to pay $5 trillion face value for all this stock, um, it's not going to sell for that much, and it would drive the price of these companies in a lot of cases to a very low valuation, which affects a lot of other people, tens of millions or maybe hundreds of millions of people who have either a direct share in one of these companies. They have it in their retirement fund, maybe, or the city or the state pension funds that either affect them directly or affect other people that provide necessary services, and There's just there's a domino effect here if you take this money. But even if you take it, even if you take this $5 trillion, it does almost nothing to the national debt. The reality of our situation here is that we are spending far more money than you can make by taxing the poor, by taxing the rich, by taxing everyone. The national government they've spent more money than it's reasonable for people to pay back. Now, there's only one way that you can solve this, honestly, and that's to dramatically reduce probably all of these. Personally, I would start with war, but take your pick. It's got to be one of these. If you're talking about something much smaller than these, it's just not going to have an impact. We need to get rid of this much per year simply not to add to the debt. So that's more than any one of these in total. It's more than these two combined. So your choices are pretty limited here. Either you have unsustainable debt or you cut these things. Now, there is, of course, a third option, and that is to print money out of thin air, which is basically just a tax on everyone who has money or earns a paycheck denominated in US currency. Um, and that money they print out of thin air, we also pay interest on for reasons. So, still making the problem worse. Anyway, that's my rant, and anytime somebody posts something like this, they should probably show their math.